Hello my friends, my name is Dave and today I want to talk to you about Slack. Slack is what's called a unified communications platform, which really means it's supposed to bring all of your tools into one place, all of your communication into a single place to make things easier to manage. But for most people, it's just a chat application. And at face value, Slack doesn't look much different from Facebook Messenger. So I do think it's a fair question to ask why Slack is worth your time. I've been using Slack professionally for about 6 years or so, and I can tell you, I think it has some major benefits over simple messaging apps like Facebook Messenger, especially for organizing activism. And when you're trying to organize more than one group, well then tools like Slack become pretty much essential. Now, I like to keep things simple, so I'm going to talk about 3 things. First off, why should you even care about Slack? What is the benefit to you personally, and what's the benefit to your local group? Secondly, I'm going to cover some of the basics, how you navigate around, how you find people, how you talk to people. I'm not going to cover every single feature of Slack because honestly, there are videos like that. It's pretty dull and it's pretty pointless. Lastly, I'm going to share some tips from my experience of using Slack, some things that might help sell why I think Slack is such a good thing for groups like ours. So why should you be using a tool like Slack? Because that's really the question, not how to use it, but why is it worth using in the first place? How is it going to benefit you over something like Facebook Messenger? How is it going to level up your activism? Well, I'll keep this really short. Messenger works really well for small, intimate teams who just want to chat about some things. And we've all probably been in those sorts of messenger groups where it just feels like it's enough, But when you start wanting to organize something which involves multiple groups or large numbers of people, when you start wanting to take on bigger targets and challenging industries, at that point, Messenger just isn't enough and things really quickly start to fall apart. So Messenger works well for one group of people having one conversation, and Slack works well when you want to build a community. And that's basically the biggest difference most people are going to notice. Tools like Slack really do help communities work better together, and having access to that kind of support network can do a lot to help you be a more effective activist. Now, I'm all about grassroots, but I'm also about the community supporting each other. And that's where the value of a tool like Slack starts to make sense. It's a more organized way to communicate and strategize. And it's a connection to the entire movement. Hopefully, I've explained the motivation for using something like Slack by now. So let's get started and look at the basics of how you navigate around, how you find people, how you talk to people, and how you get the best out of Slack. Okay, so on my screen here, you can see I've got both Slack and Facebook Messenger open. And on the left-hand side of both applications, here and here, you've got a list of people and groups that you're in some kind of conversation with. But Slack has another type of conversation called a channel, which is just a fancy name for chat room, really, a bit like in the old days. And channels are really a central idea to Slack. Channels have a name and they are dedicated to a particular topic of conversation. They can have any number of members. They can be public, where anyone can join, or they can be private, and you can join by invite only. Now, people use channels for all kinds of things, but they mostly end up being one of 3 types. It's some kind of project or campaign, so all communications central to that campaign will go in there. That means links for relevant meeting minutes, web addresses, any files or videos, etc. The second kind is some kind of service or department, things like graphic design, translations, legal advice, activist support, all those sorts of things. And thirdly, some special interest group, a department or a country or something like that. Animal Save UK is an example, Climate Save UK is an example. Anything relevant to that particular group would go in there rather than being relevant to a particular project. Now, channels are where most of the work gets done, but you can communicate directly with people too. All communication which isn't in a channel is considered a direct message, and it appears below the channels list here. You can send a message to a person or a group of people, and it works exactly the same way other apps do. So I'm going to skip over this and focus on channels because everything I show you about that will be applicable elsewhere. So let's close Messenger. Now, today I'm showing you the desktop version because it's the easiest to get around and explain how everything works. But I do strongly recommend that you install Slack on your phone if you want to be an active member of the wider community. You get the same application whether you use mobile app, desktop app, or the website, but you are much more likely to use and engage with the apps you've got in your pocket, right? Also, since I'm walking through the desktop version, there will be some small differences if you're on mobile, but nothing too insurmountable, I hope. So let's take a quick look at this interface again. The interface is broken into two sections, the sidebar here and the chat window. The sidebar has a few shortcuts at the top, which we'll come back to in a second. And then there's this starred section. There's the channels and direct messages. All of these are collapsible with these little buttons here. To move something into the starred section, all you do is select a channel or a direct message, let's say graphics questions here, and hit star. And then you'll see that this appears in this starred section here. You can see I've got some already starred. Now you can see the channels which I'm a part of in my sidebar, but how would you know which channels there are, and how do you know how to join them? For that, you need the channel browser, and that appears up here in this list of shortcuts, but it might not be there for you by default. So the way to do that is by going to More, going down to customize this list in your preferences, and then making sure the tick is in here. And you can enable the others if they feel like something that'll be useful to you. So let's use the announcements channel as an example. Seems like a perfect one to join. In the channel browser, you can see there 00 announcements, and you can click join there, or you can preview the channel first and then join the channel. And that's it, I'm in the announcements channel. Now what I don't want to do is send a load of example messages and things to show you how Slack works into the announcement channel, but I do need to show you around the chat window. So to do that, I can either do it by sending myself a direct message or creating a new channel. And creating a new channel is much more interesting, so let's do that. To create a new channel, you're going to come up to the top of the channels section here in the sidebar, and you're going to click plus, and then create a channel. We are going to give it a name. For this one, let's just say dh-test-channel, and some description. It can be anything you like. Because we don't want people to see this channel outside of this example, I'm going to make this private, but it doesn't have to be. And then we'll click Create. At this point, it's going to ask you to invite people to the channel. That's not what we want to do right now, so we're going to hit Skip for now. And there we are in our brand new channel. Let's start it. And we can see it's appeared up there. So now let's take a look at the chat window. The first thing you can see in the chat window is a little intro section with some shortcuts. Add an app, add people, share the channel, those sorts of things. And then there are two status messages from me, from creating the channel. And I'll send a simple text message by typing something into this compose bar here. Some simple message. If I want multiple lines, I can press Shift and Enter. So I can send a message with multiple lines. If I want to mention somebody, I can start by typing an @ followed by a name. To myself, for example. And that will prompt a notification to that user. I can mention a channel, for example, the announcements channel that we just spoke about. And that will provide a link in this chat to the other chat. Now, a couple of other ways to mention people. You can mention everybody in a channel by typing @channel. Now that means everybody in that channel is going to get a notification. It's really useful sometimes for announcing important information, but it's not something you want to do casually because a lot of people are going to get notified. Alternatively, if you want to message just the people who are online right now, you can type here, followed by something. And then only the people who are signed into Slack and a part of that channel will get the notification. Now, there are some formatting options down here, the normal things you might see in Word, which you can turn on and off with this button here. You can use this bar here to mention people. You can use emojis. Thankfully, every emoji under the sun is available. And if you want to attach any kind of file, you use this here. You can also drag files directly into the channel window to share them with the rest of the channel. And I'm going to show one particular trick here. This is a very large video, much larger than the 25 megabytes you would be limited to on Facebook Messenger. Just drag that in, type a little message, and hit enter, and that's going to do an appropriate thing in the channel window depending on what kind of document it is. So it might show a preview for a Word file, it will show a video for a video, audio for audio, all those good things. And this is a really big deal if you're using Messenger for everything, because it has some very tight restrictions on what files you can share and how big those files can be. Slack gives you much more flexibility to share what you need to with the people you want to share it with. Now, there are some other things you can do with the Compose bar, but we're going to come back to that. For now, I want to show you what you can do with messages in the chat window, this one here, because it has some cool tricks. Firstly, you can react to a message. So here's this first simple message. I can add a reaction, and I can use any emoji I like to react, which is pretty cool. The next thing you can do is start a thread by clicking this button here. Now, a thread is a simple side conversation. It stops the main conversation become polluted with one particular line of conversation. You can share a message, and that's going to give you an option to share that message in any other channel. Now, this is from a private channel, so it can only be shared inside here, which makes sense. But in a public channel, you'd be able to share information freely between them. You can save messages, so they appear in the shortcuts section. So if I save this one here, you see it's added to my saved items, and my saved items are up here in the shortcuts section. And you can do a lot more than that. Some important things to note there. You can edit a message, which is a big deal if you're coming from some of the other chat applications. One which is particularly useful is pin to channel. A pin to channel is a useful way of saving a message for the whole chat, not for you personally, so that you're not having to scroll back through endless messages to find important information. Let's take a closer look at threads. You start one by clicking this button, and a new section appears on the right-hand side of the chat window. And you can have a little side conversation there without spamming the main chat on a single point. When there's been an update to a thread, you'll see the update highlighted in the shortcuts window if you have that available. Like this here. And let's take a quick look at pinned messages too. At the top of the chat window, you'll see this little info button here. You're going to click it to open the channel details pane. In the details pane, you can see a few sections, one of which is called the pinned section. And when you pin a message, it's going to appear in here like this. It's really good for making sure that important information is easy to find. When you upload a file, it will appear in the file sections here, like the video I uploaded a minute ago. Finally, there is this lightning bolt down here, which is where you get to the more advanced types of messages. You'll see options from a lot of the integrations that might be installed, like polls, events, etc. And you can ignore this stuff mostly until you're more comfortable with the basics. One last thing that I do want to bring your attention to in the chat window is up here in the details pane again, so click the info button. And it's something under the more menu here. Sometimes you're going to want to stop notifications for a particular channel if it's gotten particularly chatty. And you can do that by muting it or changing your notification settings here. So we can mute it, and then you won't get notified for anything in that channel until you unmute it. Or you can change the notifications to whatever your preferences might be. Now, obviously, Slack can get quite advanced if you need it to, but as far as the basics are concerned, that's really it. It's not a complicated thing at all, and my best advice is to get it downloaded, join some channels, and get involved in the conversations, maybe join a campaign and see how we can help each other out. So let's move on and get to some of those tips that I promised you. My first big tip is this. You'll see a thing in your direct messages window which says Slackbot. Now, I want you to ignore this completely. It confuses a lot of people. It's essentially a chat bot which is meant to help you get used to Slack. It doesn't, and it confuses people more than it helps. So just completely ignore that, and actually, you can just remove it entirely. My second tip is this. Use the direct message feature to message yourself. It's a really, really handy place just to keep track of things and just to keep stuff so you can refer to them later. So for example, I might copy this image from Pinterest, bring it over here, and Command V or Control V on Windows to keep that there. Handy, right? Now, the next tip is a bit more involved, but it's simple enough when you understand it. At the beginning of the video, I said that Slack was about bringing all the things you use regularly into one place, and that's done by using integrations. Now, installing integrations is way more advanced than I want to cover in this video, but using them isn't. So let's take a look. Most integrations, as well as some other features of Slack, can be accessed by starting a message with a / like this. You see the menu appears there. Now, the most common integration I see people wanting to use is GIFs. So let's show you how to do that. What you're going to do is start by typing / and follow that with Giphy. You can press tab to complete that. Followed by whatever it is you want a GIF for. So in this case, let's use vegan and press enter. Typically comedic GIF of vegan, we press send. And then we get that GIF of the message. Now, I'm going to encourage you to take a look through the menu when you press the / there, because some of the more advanced features of Slack, like leaving this channel, like setting yourself a reminder for a particular time, are all hidden away behind that. You can find them through different interface elements, but this is really the easiest way to go about it. I know it feels a bit weird at first, but it's very, very straightforward and it saves a great deal of time. The next tip I want to show you is how to search inside Slack. Searching is really helpful for when you haven't pinned a message, you haven't starred a message, and you want to find it again. So there are two ways to do that in Slack. There is a global search up here, and that's going to search everything in Slack. So I could be looking for something like Cargill, and it's going to find channels, it's going to find everything which is in Slack and mentions Cargill. Let's get rid of that. And then the other way of searching is by searching just inside a single channel. And that's done again inside the channel details pane, and you'll see there's a find button here. And what it really does is it puts the right bits of prefix in here so that you can search for particular things inside that particular channel. So if I typed little, you see that it's brought up the little message that I typed earlier. The last little tip I wanted to show you is something which is a fairly new feature of Slack, but it's really useful if you find yourself in a lot of channels and you want more organization in this sidebar over here. The feature is called Sections, and it allows you to create a custom section in the sidebar, just like the star bit, just like channels, just like direct messages. Now, to create a section, you hover over one of the existing ones, like channels here, and you'll see these three little dots here. You're going to click inside there and select Create a New Section. It's going to give you some suggestions like these here, but let's create something new for organizing the projects I'm involved in. So let's just type projects. We can call it whatever we want, and we can choose one of these. Let's choose fire and click create. And you'll see now I've got this little section here. Now what I can do is open up my channels window, and let's say we drag this one into projects, we drag this one into projects, and then we drag this one into projects. Now, you can use that for channels, you can use it for direct messages, you can use it for anything you want. It's a really useful way of just being more organized with the number of channels that you are involved with. So that's pretty much all there is to it. We've talked about why tools like Slack help communities like ours become more organized, more effective, and help our activism have a bigger impact. We've talked about the basics of navigation, getting around and talking to people. And we've talked about a few of the things which I've picked up over the years, which are really useful features in Slack and that you just don't find in the ordinary messaging apps. I really hope this has been useful to you. Of course, if you've got any questions about this whatsoever, I am absolutely happy to answer all of those. And if you're looking for a more personal, more one-to-one walkthrough of Slack, I'm absolutely happy to do that too. You can find me on Slack and other things, you know. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.